StrayAllDay.com.
You are now tuned into the show where you learn the discipline to show up day after day to do the work, the confidence to put yourself out there boldly and authentically, and the mental toughness to continue showing up, doing the work, putting yourself out there, even when the success you're expected to achieve has yet to be achieved. And on top of all this, get a huge dose of personal initiative. That is the go-getter energy that moves any one of us, including yourself, to go and make things happen instead of waiting for things to happen. And then we put all this together into a series of frameworks, approaches, insights, strategies, and techniques all underneath the umbrella of one unifying philosophy that is called Work on Your Game. My name is Dre Baldwin, also known as Dre All Day, and welcome to the show. And today's topic it's an open question that I'm going to answer. The topic today is, do you have freedom of opinion? This is a question that I'm posing rhetorically to you, and I'm going to go over some points to help you understand whether or not you have it. And it is a whether or not, it is a binary, yes or no. Before we get into this, I remind you all of two things. First of all, my daily motivation, Monday motivation messages, guaranteed to have you focused, sharp, and on point. Once we start sending those out again, you'll be getting them straight to your phone. All you got to do is text me my number, which is 305-384-6894. You'll be getting those when we reactivate right to you, right to that device you have in your hand right now. Secondly, Work on Your Game University. If you'd like to work with me directly, have me as your direct coach. This is the only way that it happens. This is the way to get direct access to me. It ain't for everybody. We're looking for a certain type of person who is looking for us. If you listen to this show on a regular basis, you have a good idea of what I talk about. You have a good idea of my style of delivery and what I bring to the table. And you already know if there's a yes or a no for you. Go to workonyourgameuniversity.com. If you're not sure, go to workonyourgameuniversity.com. If you are somewhere in between, go to workonyourgameuniversity.com. You can see what we have going on and take your next steps from there. So getting into the topic here today, which is, do you have freedom of opinion? Now, this topic is something that I thought about when I was engaging in conversation with someone. I remember I had made a post on social media. I posted it in more than one place, but I had basically trashed the medical industry in the United States, which I have done in the past. Will continue to do in the present, and I plan to do more of it in the future. And if you want to hear the first episode where I officially trashed the medical system, I've touched on it other times, but episode 2338, trash that is the American medical system, was laid out back in that episode. So I said something about the medical industry, probably a little snippet from what I would have said in that episode. And somewhere in this conversation, the person who I was exchanging with, I think I posted it was on Instagram. Someone left a comment, and I do respond to my own comments on social media. I don't get into other people's stuff except on X. But I came to realize the person I was talking to works in the medical industry, so they were basically defending their career when I was trashing the medical industry, which is why they seemed to be activated by what I had said. And they've been working in the industry for basically their entire professional career up to that point, based on what they were saying. And I told them that although I believe that they were honestly defending their positions, I think they were. You work in the medical industry, you've been working in it your whole adult life, then of course you're going to defend it. I also said that because of your position, you don't really have freedom of opinion. This is what I said to this person. You really don't, you're not in a position to have a different opinion than the one that you have because you work there. If you were to trash the industry, well, you probably wouldn't be working there, or you get fired from your job for saying it publicly. And I also juxtapose that by saying to them, listen, if I wanted to believe everything that you believe, I could, and there's nothing adverse would happen to me. But if you were to adopt all of my opinions, well, you would lose your job. You might want to quit your job, and you'd be arguing against everything that you've invested your entire career into. You are emotionally, financially, and physically, tangibly invested into the thing that you're defending. So I understand why you're defending it. Yeah, I told the person, I don't think you're lying, but you invested everything into it. So you're not in position to really argue with me because you can't change your mind. That's what I was saying to the person. I mean, they are in position to argue with me because they're defending their position. But I said to them, I can change my mind on this opinion. You can't change your mind. So that's what I mean when I say freedom of opinion. It's not that the opinion that you are espousing or defending is necessarily wrong. There's no such thing as a wrong opinion. And it's not that you're lying either. It's just that if you're defending something that you are fully invested in, again, physically invested, financially invested, your life and time is invested into it, of course you're going to defend it. Would you trash it while you're in it? Maybe if he was about to quit and about to leave the industry because he was sick of it, then maybe he'd be in position to trash it. But he wasn't in that position, which is what I said to him. And I'm not sure he was too open to hearing that. I doubt anybody would be, but I said it to him anyway. And instead of me just letting that conversation be wasted on that individual, I said, why not do a whole episode on it and make it into a bigger point? And that's where we are here today. So that's what I'm talking about now. Do you have the freedom to have any opinion you want to have? That's the question that we're going to answer here today. And I'm going to give you some prompts to help you figure this out. And if the answer is yes, then all right, great, congratulations to you. If the answer is no, you got to decide if that's okay. For in some places and sometimes it is okay to not have the freedom of opinion to just say what you want to say. And when I say freedom of opinion, I mean not only internally in your thinking, but also externally in your speaking. And this is something that I find being an heavy internet publisher that I am, I find that many people don't want to get into this. This is a contact sport. And I was just in the middle of having a direct message exchange with someone, a business person I know and respect. And we were talking about this, and this is something that I said to them in a conversation, which will probably become a longer episode at some point in the future once I contextualize what I want to say about this exchange I've been having with this person, because it is interesting and I'm trying to figure out what the right angle will be for it. However, one of the things I said to them, because they had noticed that some things that I said on X, also known as Twitter, and that's the only app in which I will randomly engage with a random person and comment on something that somebody who I don't even know has said. That's the app where I do that, because that's the town square of the internet. And that town square is a contact sport, meaning if you jump into the wrong conversations or the right conversations, however you choose to look at it, and you have the wrong or the right point of view, when you jump into it, oh, it gets rough. It gets verbally rough with people out there. The problem is I don't mind playing rough verbally. It doesn't bother me. I came up in the sports world. I grew up playing basketball on the playgrounds of Philadelphia. I am a professional shit talker. So I have no problem getting rough verbally with people, and I don't start it, but I will engage if somebody else decides they want to take it there. But anyway, all that out the way, let's get into the topic here today, which is, do you have freedom of opinion? This is just a question. Number one, could you have the opposite opinion of the one you have while keeping your job, your paycheck, and your friends? And this is a question that I ask to anyone, or I ask it of myself anytime I put something out there publicly and someone disagrees with me publicly. When someone disagrees with me publicly, the first thing I'm asking myself, I usually don't even pose this question to other people, because usually it's an exercise in futility, because all it does is hold a mirror up to them. And generally speaking, just as a general rule, and all of you can take this with you and use it as you wish, most people do not like having a mirror held up to them. And sometimes holding a mirror up to someone just simply means asking them a question, not even making an assertion, like telling them who they are, because people usually push back against that. I would even push back against that. Someone tries to tell me something and I don't think it's true, then I may defend myself. But if you just ask someone a question and let them answer, or put them in a position to answer, put the ball in their court, as we say, how would they respond to this? Most people don't respond to this one too well. And I just gave you an example here, but I've used this framing before. So let me give you the question again. Could you take the opinion that you have a strong opinion on any subject? Could you have the exact opposite opinion of the one that you strongly believe and still keep your job, your paycheck, and your friends? So for example, if you pay attention to politics and you're a big fan of the Democratic candidate, could you flip and have a strong opinion supporting the Republican candidate and negative against the Democratic candidate? If you did that, could you keep your job? Could you keep making money the way you make money, and would all your friends still be your friends? Just an open question. Just ask yourself that question. And this is a key question that I ask of anyone who I find is vehemently arguing for or against anything. When someone's strongly on the side of one a belief, idea, opinion, whatever, it's not that they're wrong. Again, you can have whatever opinion you want. And your opinion should be flexible enough that you are willing to change them pending new information, perspectives, and information. Perspectives and information, perspectives, and experiences. But if you were to flip your position, what are the penalties or consequences for you? Because it's different from everybody, for everybody. I have certain opinions on many things. I share them all the time here on this platform, on the favorite things I like about having this platform. But if I was to flip my position on any of these things, what are the penalties or consequences? Well, one penalty or consequence for me, let's say, is that some of you who also agree with my position might decide you don't like me anymore because now I have a different position. That could be a penalty or consequence, if you want to call it that. But other than that, there's not really anything that could happen to me, right? At least not that I'm thinking of off the top of my head. Like, I have shared opinions and perspectives with people who I consider friends, people who I'm cool with, people who are business associates, and I share them publicly in such ways that I know people who I'm cool with, who we may not talk directly about it, but I know they see what I'm saying. They don't say anything, but last I checked, if I was to reach out to them, we'd still be cool. At least I think we would be. Maybe I'm wrong. But the point is, there's nothing else that I think I would lose in this process. And this is one of the reasons why I've said this many times, why I am thankful for the position that I stand in, because it gives me the freedom to say these things. It gives me license to say these things without fearing too much backlash. I mean, I can get backlash like people leaving negative comments or not liking my stuff, but I don't even consider that backlash because people can say whatever they want. We live in a country with the First Amendment, which people have the right to say whatever they want to say, whether they love you, hate you, want to trash you, they think you're a piece of shit, or they think you're amazing. They are allowed to say it, and I defend anybody's right to share any opinion that they have, and also the right of anyone to respond to that opinion, which is the reason why I use X to do exactly that. So what I find is that when people argue very strongly and emotionally on one side of anything is because they do not have the option of flipping to the other side. That may not always be the reason, but I find it's usually true. So if someone's arguing strongly in favor of the Democrat, they don't have the option of flipping to be in favor of the Republican because all their friends would hate them, they would lose their job, they would lose their well-being, and they'd be ostracized from their current community, as an example. So this person who I was talking to works in the medical industry. I believe this gentleman said he was a nurse. He doesn't have the freedom to argue against the medical industry. He worked there. All right, your entire career is based on working there and what the industry has indoctrinated into you and what was taught to you at your medical school that is funded by Big Pharma and the industries. And either you fully believe it, or even if you don't have the freedom to go against it. So, I mean, what are we really talking about here? Or do you have the freedom to have a different opinion? If not, then again, I can't change your mind. I can't give you any information that's going to make you think anything different. Again, it doesn't make this person is wrong for defending their career choices. But this is not a fair fight. Now, if I'm going to have a conversation with someone about a topic in which I have one opinion, you have another opinion, I want to talk to someone who has the ability to flip their opinion the same way I have the ability to flip mine. That's what I'm saying. And which is why when I mentioned a moment ago in passing, I mentioned I'm having this direct message exchange with a person who I know is an entrepreneur. I know they can have any opinion that they want. Doesn't mean they will, but they can. That's more of a fair fight, if you get what I'm saying. So when I say fair fight, I mean that just metaphorically. It's not that either one of us is one down because of our positions. But when I'm talking to someone, I know that I have the opinion to change any opinion. I have the ability, rather, and freedom to change any opinion that I have. So you can believe what I said. One reason that you can believe the things that I'm telling you and that I truly believe the things that I'm saying is because there's nothing anybody could do to me negatively if I was to have the opposite opinion. I'm giving you the opinion that I have, and all of you know, all right, all of you live in society, you talk to people every single day. You know that some of the things that I've said here on this platform, if I was to go to certain places that maybe you go to and have these opinions, there'd be a whole lot of blowback and a whole lot of penalties to be paid for them. It's not like not every opinion I have is just a widespread, mainstream accepted opinion. I think we can agree with that, right? I trash the medical industry. There are a lot of people who don't like that. I've trashed the educational system. There are a lot of people who don't like that. I've trashed the mainstream media. A lot of people don't like that. I've said some things about, at least as of this recording, former President Donald Trump, who knows if he'll stay former, he'll become president again. I said some things about him that weren't even positive. I said some things about him that were neutral, and people went crazy. All right. So again, it's not like I'm just taking the easy position. Like, everybody understands this, right? So if I just wanted to be left alone and not ruffle any feathers, I wouldn't be talking about these things. I would just keep talking about mindset and discipline and mental toughness and some generic business things, and not touch any third rail topics that might piss somebody off. But at the same time, one of the reasons that I have this show, one of the reasons that I have this platform, because I have things that I want to say that I can't not say, which means in turn, I don't give a fuck if somebody's pissed off by something that I said, because I'm not here to appease you. I'm here to give you the game. And if the game happens to piss you off, then your issue is with the game. Your issue is not with me. I just happen to be the medium through which the game is being given. Everybody understand what I'm saying here? All right, so I'm not here to appease anybody. I'm here to appease, actually, I am here to appease one person, actually not a person, the entity of the game. Whatever the game is, I'm giving you the game as best I know it, as best I see it, and as best I understand it. That's my job. And if I tell you some piece of game that you disagree with, okay, that's fine. Maybe I just see it differently than how you see it. But I'm not here to appease you, and I'm not saying anything purposely to rile people up. Somebody here left a comment on one of my posts on IG that said, because sometimes I take a meme post. I'll talk about some social topic, current event, and I'll post it on a meme. Somebody said, well, you're just trying to rile up engagement on your post. Well, mofo, that's what social media is for. Isn't the purpose of social media to get people to look at your stuff? That's why it's called social media, motherfucker. That's the point. Now, I'm not doing it as a, what's the word? It's not like I'm trolling. I just say something outlandish because I think it's going to get people's responses. Again, I'm telling you what I actually think. And again, I've been saying these things for years, but because when I talk about social issues, is so few and far between all my other material, people who come across something and haven't seen me talking about these things think that I just did it out of nowhere, that it just came out of left field, but it actually has not. If you consume my material on a consistent basis, I know I have a lot, so not everybody can keep up. But you see that I talk about these things all the time. Sometimes it's the main subject of the episode. Sometimes it's just something that I sandwich in the middle of other things. But it's not like I'm coming out of nowhere talking about this stuff. But some people, to them, it's out of nowhere because it's just their perspective. Anyway, continuing on what I'm saying. I have the freedom to change any opinion. So you can believe what I'm saying on that basis alone and other points, because I have no incentive to say a certain thing. And again, if I just wanted to be safe, I would say a whole lot different things than what I've said. The person who is in an industry has an incentive to defend that industry. Same way that if I trash the educational system, a teacher is going to defend it. How could you not? You've been working in the industry for 20, 30, 40 years. Are you going to sit there and let me trash it and not say nothing? Most people can't do that. They're going to defend it. And I understand. I'm not mad at them. So again, if you're a lifelong Republican or a lifelong Democrat and I was to trash the Republicans or trash the Democrats, you're probably going to say something. You're probably going to say something back to me. And I understand it. But the reason why this is a problem is because anyone who's a critical thinker has the ability to argue any side of a conversation. Either side of a conversation, if it's only two sides, or any side other than the one that they have right now. Anyone who's a critical thinker has this ability. Doesn't mean you have to have the opinion, but you have the ability. Moving on to point number 2. Speaking of such, today's topic, once again, is do you have freedom of opinion? Point number 2, how would you argue for or defend the other side? So whatever opinion you have, if you wanted to flip it and actually argue for the side that you are actually against, how would you do it? This is a key question you can use anytime you find someone vehemently arguing for or against anything. Just ask them the simple question. If you were to flip to the other side of this argument, how would you do it? What would you say? Okay, so you're a Republican, you hate the Democrats. If you had to defend the Democrats, how would you do it? If you're a Democrat, you hate the Republicans, how would you defend the Republicans? How would you say it? If you were making an honest, genuine argument to defend them, how would you do it? Not like some bullshit, but how would you actually do it? What would you say about it? And I remember back in 2016, when Donald Trump and Hillary Clinton were campaigning against each other for the election. And someone came up, I forget the guy's name, but this is when they were still having audiences for the debates. I think they stopped having audiences for the presidential debates because Donald Trump was landing so many verbal zingers on Hillary Clinton that they decided, we can't let him have an audience anymore because he plays too well to the audience and it's hurting the opponent. That's what I believe happened. You may have a different opinion. That's fine. But anyway, one of the people was like an undecided voter, got to ask a question to both Clinton and Trump. And he said, can each of you say something positive about your opponent? And Hillary Clinton, I remember what she said. She said, well, I would say his children. And she gave props and said positive things about Donald Trump's children. I can't remember what Donald Trump said, but I think it was something about her like toughness and resilience. And I think Clinton cheated on this question because she didn't say anything about Trump. She said something about his children. She didn't say anything about him personally. Well, he actually gave her a personal compliment about who she is as a person. It was a great question because it's exactly what I'm talking about here in point number 2. If you are vehemently going against something, what would you say positive about it if you were on the other side of the conversation? Can you make a strong argument for the very thing that you disagree with, the very thing that you're attacking? Could you make a positive argument in that position? This is also known as the steel man technique, which is the flip side of the straw man technique. So the steel man, if you're not familiar with it, well, first of all, let's talk about the straw man. I talked about the steel man in episode 1927, by the way. The steel man, actually, back up, straw man. Straw man is a logical fallacy in which you take something that somebody says, rephrase it into something that they didn't say, and then pose it to them and ask them to defend it or argue against it. And it's not even what they said. So you basically repackage someone's argument to make it sound different than what it actually is. If I say, for example, if I say something like, let's say I'm talking to my friend who's a strict vegan, and I say, well, I appreciate the fact that you're a vegan and I respect it. And at the same time, sometimes I like to eat burgers and steaks and hot dogs. I don't eat hot dogs, but let's just say I said that. And that my vegan friend, triggered by the fact that I eat meat, will say something like, so, Dre, what you're saying is you hate all animals and you don't care about the greenhouse gases going into the atmosphere, and you don't care about climate change, and you don't care about all the animals that get slaughtered in order for us to eat meat. Is that what you're saying? That's a straw man argument. And listening to that example, many of you have probably heard and seen people use versions of the straw man. Straw man, again, takes what you actually said, rephrases it into something that you didn't say, and then they pose it back to you as if you need to defend it. And you're like, yo, that's not even what I said. And you need to be careful catching people in the straw man because it's a great tactic to throw you off of the topic of what you're actually saying. And people do this all the time. Human beings are prone to using the straw man. Logical fallacy is one of the most common ones that people use, is rephrasing your words and turning it into something other than what it is. And one of the tells for the straw man, and you need to be careful yourself of doing this, is when someone starts a response to a statement with, so you're saying, or so are you arguing that, or so, and then what you do is rephrase what they said. And anytime someone does this to me, I tell them, this is my response to them. Maybe you can use this, maybe you can't. I tell people, hey, I put words together for a living. Right? It is my job to put words together, whether in the written form or the verbal form, to an audience or to an individual. So I don't need you to paraphrase what I said. Respond to exactly what I said, not your version of what I said. That's a good way for me to combat the straw man. You can come up with your own way, or you can just point out there's a straw man. Like, yo, I didn't even say that. Like, you're taking what I said and turning it into something else and then arguing against it. And it's called a straw man because you're making like a straw man, like a scarecrow, and then you're beating it up like, hey, I beat up your argument. Like, that's not my argument. You made a scarecrow version of my argument. Here's the actual argument over here. Let's come back over here to where I was. So the steel man is the flip side of this. And this is when you actually take someone's argument and you make it even better than how they made it. You make a stronger version of your opponent's argument, and then you try to argue against that. See, that's the steel man. So you don't want to create a position that somebody didn't say and then argue against it, because again, you're fighting ghosts. You don't want to do that. And again, people do this all the time, and I just gave you an example of it. The steel man, on the other hand, is when, let's say I make the same argument that I like to eat burgers and steak, and a staunch vegan who's a critical thinker could reply by saying, hey, I understand, Dre, why you like to eat burgers and steak. Burgers are actually good. I remember when I used to eat burgers, they tasted good. And a well-made steak, is very hard to pass up. There's some people out there who just cannot pass up a nice, juicy steak at the nicest steakhouse in town. As a matter of fact, there's some great steakhouses in town that I can refer you to. And people who want to get lots of protein may consider steak and burgers to be the best way to get protein on a consistent basis. So I understand why you are not a strict vegan like me. From there, if I wanted to, let's say I made that. That's the steel man argument. I am making the argument even better for why somebody likes to eat meat, even though I hate eating meat. From there, if I wanted to, I could start asking that person questions about if they knew about the alternative ways to get protein besides eating animal products. Why? Because now I've got myself on their side. I've shown them that I'm not just going to combat them and go head to head with them, which puts people in a defensive mode. And this is where arguments start. But it's the framing that I do. Now, I've positioned myself to where I could go deeper, but it's the framing that helps the other side understand that I understand them. Because not only did I agree with their point, I actually added to their point. I buttressed their point by adding even more points to their point to make it just as good, if not better, than the way they made it. And a good steel man argument, you can make the other side's argument better than they make their argument. That's a good steel man. And you have to be a superior critical thinker to be able to do this. And this is why most people cannot do it. Most people have never even considered doing what I just described. But if you get good at it, now that I told you, this makes you a superior critical thinker to where you can take someone else's point and make it better than they made it. See if you can do that. And a good lawyer, for example, any of you who's a good trial lawyer, at least, someone who goes in the courtroom and goes back and forth, they have to be really good at the steel man, because a good lawyer, before they go to court, they plan out, what do I think the other side, my counterpart, is going to say? I got to be ready for what they're going to say. And then you got to be ready to argue against what they say. Or a good debater does this as well. Even in politics, the politicians, they practice before they do their live debates as what? What is my opponent going to say? What questions might the moderators ask me? And how can I be ready to respond to whatever my opponent might use against me? So you want to be prepared ahead of time. This is a form of doing your homework. All professionals do this. Number 3, the topic here today is, do you have freedom of opinion? This is an open question. Number 3, what opinions do you have that most people around you disagree with? Name them. It's open requests. What opinions do you have that most people around you disagree with? Most people cannot name any because most people don't have any. This is interestingly enough. Or if they do have some, they don't want to say them out loud. And listen, I'm not knocking you if you're this type of person. Again, this lane that I've chosen is not for everybody. Not everyone should drive in this lane. Okay, I'm not knocking any of you who chooses not to. The sad truth of all of this is most people's opinions are not based in their own independent or critical thinking. Most people's opinions are based on what they have picked up and have had taught to them and been forced to accept, forced on them for acceptance by the people around them. Many people's opinions are based on just things they picked up from their environment, i.e. your peers. That can be your friends, families, bosses, associates, your environment, the media you take in, or anything else. Most people just accept things that sound good to them, are aligned with their emotions, and are accepted by their peer group. This is how most people come to most of their opinions and perspectives. It sounds good, it's aligned with your emotions, and most of your friends think the same thing. So you just accept it without ever thinking critically, does this even make sense? And let me be clear, I used to be like this in many ways. I always knew, even back to my high school days, that I had ways of thinking that was a little bit different than most people. Even actually earlier than that, like playing in the back driveway as a 8-year-old, I knew that I had different ways of thinking than most people, but wasn't sure because I hadn't been around enough people to see it. Maybe it's just these dummies that I'm around that live on my block. Then when I went to start going to school, it was more people. And I went to high school, it was more people. College, more people. I started to realize, okay, this is actually a thing. And once I come to realize that, I start to be that person who would be the one person in the room. There's 10 of us in the room. I'm the one person that's like, wait a minute, this idea that we're all accepting is not actually a good idea. And here's why. And sometimes you get shouted down by the group. Sometimes that you get ignored by the group. But it never stopped me from having a different opinion if I knew I could stand on my opinion. The fact of the matter is, human beings, being social creatures, we tend to adapt and conform to what the people around us like, think, say, and how they behave. That's how most people live. I don't think I'm the only person who's ever had like different ways of looking at things than most of the people around me. The difference is I was able to stick to the convictions of those things that I believe that were different, even when the people around me did not. Whereas many people could start off thinking something different, but when they see that nobody else goes along with it, they shut up and just go along with the crowd, which is fine. That's what you want to do. There are times when going along to get along works, and there are people for whom going along to get along is actually a good career decision. But someone like myself, as I told you, one of the reasons why I have the platform that I have is because I have things that I say here that I can't hold in. I can't not say them. That's the reason why I have this platform. And that's just me. It doesn't make me better than anybody. It just makes me different. And the good thing about life, the flavor of life, is that we are not all the same, nor should we be. Because if we were, then computers and AI could replace all of us and do it better than we do. So this is why it's relatively easy to point out the conformity in most people, because most people do not think, do not read, and are lazy. I've told you this many times. Most people don't think, they don't read, and they're both mentally and physically lazy. So you should ask yourself the question that I posed at the beginning of this point. What opinions do you have that most of your peers, I'm talking about the people you talk to every day, what opinions do you have that they disagree with? And how would you defend those opinions? Or how do you defend them? And if you had to make an opposite argument, how would you make it? That one's probably pretty easy because your friends have already given you the material. They already tell you what they think. They're talking about it all the time. Maybe you pretend to go along with it. That one shouldn't be too hard for you. Anyway, let's recap today's class, which is, do you have freedom of opinion? So this came from, I was talking to someone who works in an industry. They've been in it their whole career. They were defending the industry when I was trashing the industry. And I said to them, well, you're not really in a position to have any opinion other than the one that you have. So I don't think you're lying, but also you don't have freedom of opinion. You can't think anything different than what you're thinking. Damn sure can't say it because you work there. And that led to this topic. Point number one, because you have the opposite opinion of one you have while keeping your job, your paycheck, and your friends. Just ask yourself that question. The fact of the matter is, most people cannot answer that in the affirmative. Number two, how would you argue for or defend the other side? This is known as a steel man argument. How would you make your opposing side's argument better than they made it? Number three, what opinions do you have that most people around you disagree with? What do you believe that most people might think is stupid, crazy, or ridiculous? And would you even say it out loud once you identify what it is? You probably have a few things, but once you remembered it consciously, would you even say it out loud? And what would your friends say or do if you did? All that said, text me, see my community numbers down below in the description. Workonyourgameuniversity.com. Want to work with me directly? This is the way it happens. Again, that's workonyourgameuniversity.com. You can see the feedback and the case studies of people we're working with now and have worked with in the past. You can be next. Work on your game. Dre, all